Hello, I'm Lindsay Crossness, Director of Education for the Orpheum Theater Group, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to In Their Shoes, where we speak with alumni of Orpheum Education Programming who are currently working in the performing arts. I'd also like to thank our generous donors and sponsors who continue to support the Orpheum Education Department and programs in this really challenging time. Joining us on the call today, we have members of our Student Advisory Board, the STAR Council, and they will be submitting questions for our guests today. And it is my true delight to welcome Jose Alpizar on the call today. Jose is a graduate of Collierville High School and Southeast Missouri State University.
Yes.
Welcome, Jose. It's so great to see you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Lindsay. It's such a pleasure.
I guess we'll get started with, when did you become interested in musical theater? And when did you know, this is what I want to do with my life?
So I started theater as a hobby. I was part of my drama club in middle school, back when Schilling Farms was Schilling Farms Middle. Because I hear it's changed since then. So I started with my drama club there, and it was still very much a hobby when I was in middle school. And then when I got to high school, I had, when I started Collierville High School, I actually didn't do my first production until my sophomore year. Because my freshman year, they did Hello Dolly. And I remember going to see Hello Dolly, and I remember being like super amazed by everything. Like, I had never been to New York, I'd never seen a Broadway show or anything. And so for me, that was like, whoa, because it was such a step up from the kind of stuff that we did in middle school. And so I remember thinking, oh, it must be pretty cool to do that. I thought it would be cool, but I didn't really necessarily like have an interest to do it. I wasn't like, oh, like, let's give it a shot. It was until a dear friend of mine, Sophia, my sophomore year, kind of like urged me, and she was like, you have to do it. You have to do it. It's super fun. Like, you'll just do it once. And like, if you're not into it, it's fine. I was like, okay. And so I ended up auditioning for Thoroughly Modern Millie, which we did in my sophomore year of school. And I ended up getting a pretty good role, actually, which I was very surprised at. And so that kind of was when the bug bit me. And then I did that, and I realized how special of a experience it was. And I getting to meet everyone and getting to spend so much time with everyone who were very similar to me and had lots of similar interests with me. And so, yeah, and I just kept doing it after that. I kept auditioning and I kept auditioning. I became very involved in my high school theater department, along with Mr. Salter and along with a bunch of close friends. And then it wasn't until, I want to say, probably the end of my junior year that I was kind of like, yeah, like, this is what I want to do, and I want to pursue that as a career.
And you just came off working on Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines, right? As a performer?
Yes, correct. Yes, I just got done performing. I was a singer dancer for we did 3 shows, in addition to like a bunch of other like little, not really little, but a bunch of other like performance opportunities. But we had 3 main stage shows that we performed every cruise for guests. Correct.
Awesome. So I'm going to throw it over to Star Council.
Yes.
Maddie, would you like to start with your question?
Sure. So my first question, Jose, do you think that a musical theater degree would be absolutely necessary in order to continue and go to professional theater?
I'm very much of the opinion that theater is one of those professions where it's different for everyone. I think there isn't one set list of rules that you have to follow in order to get to where you want to go, because ultimately, if you want to pursue a career in the arts in and of itself is very objective, and so therefore success within the arts is very objective. And so what success means for one person could be different than what it means for someone else, which is why I always, whenever I'm talking to someone who isn't necessarily part of, who doesn't know what the world of an artist is like, when they're like, oh, if they're not on Broadway, or if they're not doing movies, if they're not doing etc., they're not successful. That's not really the case. Because I know plenty of people that have made a living working on cruise ships. It's like, this is my first cruise ship contract, and there have been people that have been performing on cruise ships that I got to meet for like over 10 years, and they love it. and it's a great way that's a great career for them if that's what you love to do. And so they consider themselves very successful in their field, and they're still artists, they're still performers. And so I don't think that there is one set way. I think it's very much, if you want to go the college route, obviously getting training, collegiate level training is obviously would be a great opportunity for you. But also college isn't necessarily, as of now, college isn't super readily available for everyone. And so there are other ways to make it happen if that's the case as well. So I don't think that there is like one set path to get to where you're going. No. If that answers your question.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a question just about the sort of daily life of the cruise ship. You know, what does that mean when you are looking at rehearsals, and how do you decide on the shows, and how many cast members, so to speak, are there?
So it's different depending on which ship you do, because so I was hired for Azamara Cruise Lines, which is Royal Caribbean's luxury line. And so because of that, their ships are going to be smaller, which means that the number of entertainment personnel and your cast in general is going to be smaller because the performance venue is smaller. So my cast was only 6 people. There's only 6 of us total. And so we performed in what was called the Cabaret Lounge, which is, it sat about 350 people. So like it wasn't tiny, but it was a good size. And the stage, we had like a raised platforms that we used depending on which kind of show. And so that's kind of the opportunity that fell in my lap. But if you were to accept a job on a bigger ship, like the actual like Royal Caribbean ships and like the big Norwegian cruise line ships, AIDA, those kind of big ships, you're going to be seeing like an actual like full-fledged like theater, something that you might see at like Carnival High School, for example, like that kind of theater. And so you might be seeing something a little bit more like that, just because the ships themselves are bigger. There are a lot more guests on it. Therefore, their entertainment venues have to be able to hold a high volume of guests. And so when it came to me personally, my contract, I rehearsed for 3 weeks in New York in October. And then we flew out to the ship in November. And so we had to go through like about 2 weeks of like different trainings and stuff, because obviously maritime rules and maritime laws, you have lots of trainings if you're a crew member on a ship that you have to go by and whatnot. And then we had this period called install, which is essentially we learned the shows in New York. We had to install them, which is like tech. It's like, it's basically tech. And so we had that period, and then we were open. And so then once we were open, we only did each of our shows once throughout every voyage. So we did 3 shows. We did 2 performances of every show. And then we did each show once every voyage. And typically a voyage for us on Azamara could last anywhere from like 8 days to 12 days. And with the whole virus situation that happened, the very last voyage that I did before we got sent home lasted 30 days. So we had the same guests on for 30 days, which was madness. But yeah, so it definitely varies. And then if you were to do a big Royal Caribbean ship, they typically stay in the Caribbean, and so you'll have shorter voyages. Therefore, you're kind of performing more often because it's always a new set of people coming in and out. They're always rotating people. Therefore, you have to perform your shows a little bit more constantly. So it truly depends on just which ship you end up getting and whatnot. But I really loved the ship that I did just because it was smaller. You got to meet people a little bit more readily. It was a little bit more of like a closer knit community on the ship, both within the crew and talking amongst guests. And then we had the really fun opportunity where, since we're entertainment, our jobs is to entertain people. When we would get to port, the whole idea of Azamara and the voyages that they provide is that they want guests to get off the boat, to go see the destinations that they go to, which is why they're constantly traveling. And so whenever the guests would get off the boat, we were also able to get off the boat. So I was able to visit 18 countries in about 5 months and and do that. And I had time off the boat, so I was able to explore. We had lots of adventures, and it was really a really awesome opportunity.
That's an amazing opportunity.
Yeah. If you want to travel, I think cruise ships is is definitely a very good way to go, because they pay very well to begin with, and it's a great way to save money as well. It's honestly, in my opinion, a really good kind of opportunity to do straight out of college, because they pay very well, and then all that money is saved because they provide housing, they provide food. And so I got off, obviously my contract was cut a little bit short, but I was still able to save up a good amount of money, which will help whenever I'm able to go back to New York.
Right.
So, yes.
Thank you. Kaya, do you have a question for Jose?
Yes. So obviously there's a lot of differences when performing a show on a cruise ship. So I was wondering like how you adjusted to like life as a performer and stuff like that.
Yeah. One thing that I'm very happy about doing a cruise ship is that it actually, especially a cruise ship that's a little bit more intimate, like the one that I was on, like I was saying, the performance venue was a little bit more intimate. One thing that I loved because of that, it strengthened the performer, like the cabaret performer side of me, if that makes any sense. Because like, I mean, when you do musicals, when you do like book musicals, you're on a stage, you're taught to play out, you're taught to be big, you're taught to do all that. And then with this kind of show, with the shows we were doing, then we had lots of more cabaret opportunities. And so that kind of taught me how to kind of pull everything back in, and which was different than what I just got done being taught at school, you know, at college. And so it taught me, it strengthened the cabaret performer side of me. And so I was able to sing songs for people in a very much more intimate setting. And so it strengthened that side of me, being able to take things a little more nuanced, make like more subtle choices because they can still see it. Which is also something I think that it's really important, especially if you want to move up to New York. New York has lots of really awesome cabaret opportunities and lots of different cabaret venues where you can make your own show, you can perform songs and whatnot. And so, and if you've never done that before, it can actually be very daunting. I was surprised. I did a cabaret back in June in the city, and I was actually really surprised to find out how nervous I was to go up on stage with a mic stand and then sing when I can like see everyone that I'm singing to. And that was kind of daunting, but then doing this contract has very mellowed me out in that aspect. And so, I think with any contract that you end up doing, whether it be ship or a regional theater or whatever, I think there's always some kind of performance aspect that it can teach you and continuously expand on, for sure.
Great, thank you. Alexis, do you have a question for Jose?
Yeah. So when you're not like on a cruise or in like a gig, how is life like in the city, you know, juggling different like jobs, lessons, auditions?
Yeah. Juggling is the perfect word for it, truly. It's very much, it's a juggle. I moved to New York in January of 2019. And then when I moved up there, I was subletting an apartment for a month with a good friend because we were looking for our own place. And so in the meantime, as soon as we got there, we kind of had to start looking for places because we had paid rent for a month. So we had that place for a month. And so we immediately kind of had to start looking. And then in the meantime, also trying to find a job, trying to also go to auditions because it's kind of like in the back of your mind, this is what I came here to do. So you always want to like squeeze in as many auditions as possible. So like the first like 3 months that I was living in the city, it was truly hectic. My mom got lots of phone calls from me being like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm stressed. And she would always be like, take a breath. But once you get into the groove of the city, you find your place. It's still very much a juggle because you find your survival gigs in the city. I did some temp work for a while through like different temp agencies, which is basically you go and you interview with them and they kind of call you on like on a basis of, hey, we need someone to come in to do this, and this. Are you free? You'll kind of give them your availability for the following week. And if you're free, they'll be like, hey, we need someone to come in and do this for today or this for the next 3 days. Are you available? And you're like, yeah, sure. Or no, I'm not, I can't. And then after I did a couple of that, I actually found a job about 6 blocks from my apartment at a restaurant because I had lots of serving experience from college. And so I ended up becoming like a cocktail waiter / like regular server at this restaurant. And it was honestly like, truly a lucky find, just because they were super flexible with my schedule. Because a lot of times in the city auditions, you'll get an email and be like, hey, come in 3 days with this is prepared, you have an appointment, and then your work schedule might already be set out. Luckily, they were super flexible, and I told them, like, right off the bat, I was like, I'm a performer first and foremost. I'm auditioning a lot. I need a place that can be flexible, but I also need to make money to live. And so they were like, yeah, absolutely. And so I was very lucky to find them. And yeah, and so it's a juggle. And then when it comes to lessons and stuff, I will say right off the bat, if you do end up going to college for musical theater, don't waste a second of it. Because if you're going to college for it, you're paying for it, or your family's paying for it, or you have a scholarship. And so go to every class. Try not to miss classes. Try not to miss dance classes. Try not to do any of that, because once you're out in the real world, those kind of things become very expensive. Voice classes in New York. I had a voice teacher in the city for the last couple months before I ended up leaving for my contract, and he was fabulous. But he was a pretty penny, because I wanted to make sure I had someone reputable. And so, but because it was my voice, and because it was a voice lesson, I was okay with paying a little bit more, just because I wanted to make sure I had someone reputable. Dance classes in the city, you have Broadway Dance Center, Steps on Broadway. Those are two different places. And typically those two places cost about $25 per dance class for about an hour and a half dance class, which right off the bat doesn't seem awful. But then if you're wanting to stay on top of that, you want to probably take like 2 dance classes a week. That's at least $50 right there. So that could be upwards of about $200 a month extra that you're paying just in dance classes. So if you do end up going to college for musical theater, take advantage of every single moment. Don't, because yeah, once you leave, all that becomes much more expensive. So, but it's a juggle. So living in the city, you learn how to juggle it. Honestly, that's the best way. You just kind of get used to it, and you realize how much you can stretch yourself thin before it becomes too thin. And it's just a groove. It's a groove that everyone kind of has to get used to. And I'm sure being away from the city for as long as I have been at this point, once I'm able to get back there, it'll kind of be the same thing. I won't be stressing to find a place to live or a job, hopefully, but it's still kind of a groove and a rhythm and a pace you kind of have to adjust yourself to. But it's the best city in the world. So.
Thanks, Jose. Ava Joy,
Yeah.
do you have a question?
Yes. So I was wondering, so we got a chance to look at your resume and your headshot and your website, which is really cool, by the way.
Thank you.
So I was wondering, do you think it's important to put like really unique special skills on your resume, and why?
Yeah, I think the point in any audition setting is to try to stand out, especially in the city when you have so many people going in for the same call that you're going in for, at a cattle call or an open call. I think the longest that I've waited at an audition studio when I was up there, I waited once to be seen for about maybe 7 hours of just kind of like hanging out in Pearl Studios, just waiting for my name to be called on. Because the thing is, if you're not in the room when they call your name and you're not there, you're done for. So I think that there's obviously such a huge amount of performers there. I think the more unique stuff that you can put on there, the better, because it'll catch the casting director's eye. I was doing, and I actually don't think I have lots of really interesting talents. And so one thing that I have down on my special skills was at the very end, after like whatever else I put like fair Mandy Patinkin impression. I know it's not a good Mandy Patinkin impression, but that's why I put that it's a fair Mandy Patinkin impression. And I was auditioning for, I can't remember, I don't know what, but the casting director was like, I did lots of forbidden Broadway work, which was like parody. It was like this thing back in the day, but a couple years ago, which was like parody Broadway shows. And he was like, can I hear your Mandy Patinkin impression? And I did it for him. And he goes, that's really bad. And I said, yeah, that's why I said it's a fair Mandy Patinkin impression. And so, but like it made him laugh, and we connected, and we actually still maintain contact now. And so it's like those little things. It's like little things that you can network with agents or with casting directors, whatever will try to catch their eye the most. It's so yeah, truly put anything and everything.
Great advice.
Sure.
So we're running a little short on time, but
I talk a lot.
No, you're great. I have to end with a few questions for you that we ask all our guests.
Oh boy. Okay.
What food or beverage do you have to get through your day?
LaCroix.
Any particular flavor?
Passion fruit or pamplemousse, which is just grapefruit, but I like saying pamplemousse.
Okay. Favorite Orpheum memory?
Favorite Orpheum? Oh, the little circle. So when I was nominated for High School Musical Theater Award, after both the male nominees and the female nominees performed, we kind of huddled in a circle behind the curtain as right before they were going to announce the winners. And that was honestly one of the coolest memories. I still hold it very dear to my heart. We kind of just huddled in a circle. We were all there. It was just like truly such a supportive feeling and like moment. And we all knew that we just loved each other very much, and we loved the connection that we had made with each other. And it was awesome. My favorite moment by far.
I love that. It's going to make me cry.
No.
All right, finally, this series is called In Their Shoes. So you got to
Okay.
show us your shoes.
My shoes. So my shoes is a sandal. I'll take it off. It's
lovely.
a sandal. I got it in Dubai. So that's about probably like the coolest thing about it. But it's just a sandal.
Yeah.
You told me to have shoes on, so I had shoes on, but I don't wear shoes around my house. So I was like, I'll just slip on my sandals.
Yeah, I got to warn you. So.
You did have to warn me. That's okay.
Well, Jose, this has been fabulous. Thank you so much for taking the
Oh,
time.
thank you for having me, and thank you for listening to me talk.
And we hope everybody will tune in next week for another episode of In Their Shoes. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.